Just a brief introduction to the accelerator. The accelerator, this will be the eighth year of this program. So we've now had 27 different foundations go through the Community Investor Accelerator. It's had different names. It's had different host organizations. There have been years where it's been sponsored in a particular region. So, for instance, the Kansas Health Foundation is sponsoring it this year, and there are five community foundations in Kansas doing this work. But we've also had national accelerators. We've had an accelerator in Indiana. So this is kind of building on this years of curriculum, helping foundations launch, grow, and strengthen their impact investing programs. A bit about my organization, the sponsor of this work. The Community Investment Project is designed to help accelerate the adoption of community impact investing by place-focused foundations. So again, we're focused on community foundations, health conversion foundations, and other place-focused foundations. So that might be family foundations that are jumping into this work. And in to help foundations, we are involved in education for board and staff. We facilitate networks and peer learning events, and we help foundations develop kind of tailored specific strategies to their communities and their community investment programs. So I'm going to start with a definition of community impact investing that really kind of narrows the field a bit, because I think what you'll see is that impact investing is a huge field that is touching on trillions of dollars of assets. But we're in this accelerator and today focused on a kind of a very narrow segment of the impact investing field. And that kind of emerges from the community need that you all might be seeing or experiencing in your places, right? So for communities to succeed, they need assets. They need a strong sense of community. They need good infrastructure. They need well-trained workers, growing local businesses, representative governments, and wealth that can be invested for the future in businesses, in community facilities, in the many other assets that communities need to succeed. And what we're seeing across the United States is that foundations are becoming that asset for their communities through the tool of impact investing. And increasingly, anchor institutions are setting aside some portion of their investment portfolio, 3%, 5%, 10%, in a way that makes that capital available in their place, and in a way that is serving their mission as a nonprofit. So again, I mentioned that impact investing is a huge field, and I just want to briefly differentiate community impact investing from the other forms of impact investing you might be seeing out there. The largest segment of impact investing out there is the ESG or the divesting field. That is kind of selling out or screening out a particular kind of investment from your investment portfolio. It gets its name from environmental, social, or governance criteria. An example of a foundation doing this might be if you're a health foundation, you may want to screen out tobacco stocks, right? So a lot of health foundations in the US don't own tobacco companies. You'll also see activist investing. This is another growing segment of impact investing. This is where a foundation may buy a specific stock so that it can be a shareholder and participate in, the stockholder meeting for a publicly traded company and influence that company's decisions. You'll also see increasingly thematic investing, right? So these are funds that are also promising some sort of social impact, whether it's a health fund or a low carbon energy fund. Um, uh, and there are thematic investing funds that are sometimes geographically based, right? There's an Invest Appalachia fund right now that allows foundations and other investors to place capital in the Appalachia region. But what we're really focused on today is community impact investing, and this is investing in local companies, organizations, or funds with the intention of generating measurable community benefit alongside some financial return to the investor, right? Traditionally, these investments might be in a nonprofit loan fund like a CDFI fund or in partnership with local banks. Um, and examples of this might be an entrepreneurship community fund or a community facility that foundations help finance. So why are foundations doing this, right? Foundations have had a long history as grant makers. They've built expertise and they've built staff that are focused on that. Why this pivot to thinking about impact investing? And just to be clear, this isn't a trend that I'm just identifying. This is a trend that is being seen across the field. Looking at data specifically for community foundations, a CF Lead survey released earlier this year indicated that 54% of community foundations have active impact investment programs. A study by FEG, an investment advisor, last year indicated that 59% of community foundations have values-aligned investment strategies. That might be a bit broader. So a smaller subset of those might have place-based impact investment programs. And then uh, uh, I will also say I have a database of the community foundations in the United States, and from our kind of inventory of those foundations, at least 150 of those 800 foundations in the United States have impact investment programs. So it is absolutely a growing trend in the field. And I think it's also important to underscore that this is a trend that is um, happening across philanthropy. I think that there's a perception, but I believe it's a wrong perception, that this is something that is done by the largest and the oldest foundations in the country. But the reality is that tiny, $10 million foundations and ginormous billion-dollar foundations are doing this work. Foundations that are structured as public charities, but also private foundations are doing this. Foundations with highly restricted endowments are doing this, as well as kind of one county community foundations and then statewide foundations are doing this work. So I promised to speak to the why. Why are foundations starting to do this? Well, I think the first observation is that board members and stakeholders are asking for this, right? Whether it is you're a community foundation and maybe a donor is asking about it, maybe you're a family foundation and a next generation board member is saying, hey, this is something that I'd like to see our foundation do. But also grantees who traditionally approached foundations for grants are also starting to ask for impact investments. So this is something that the stakeholders around your institutions are asking about. Second, some community challenges just require tools other than grants, right? So as foundations are starting to think about things like job creation and affordable housing, sector development strategies, I think they're discovering that investment is a better tool to accomplish their objectives than grants, right? Third, community need is surpassing foundation grant resources, right? Only a small amount of your foundation corpuses are dedicated to grant making. And this is an opportunity to leverage the other 95% of your assets to make a difference in your community. Fourth, we're seeing that strategic investments by foundations unlock other forms of capital. An investment by your foundation may leverage capital from other foundations. It may leverage capital from government. It may leverage other private sector investment capital into the transactions that you're supporting. And then finally, um, foundations are doing this because they believe in just local economies, right? The capital that in many cases created your philanthropic institutions came from your communities. And to be good stewards of those assets, leaving a portion of those dollars invested in your community rather than sending them to Wall Street is a way to support future generations in your community and your community for the long term. So, what does this look like in practice at a foundation? Um, I'll just provide three brief examples of investments that have been made, these kind of community impact investments. Port Huron, Michigan. There, a foundation is very focused on its kind of urban core. It's downtown, and there the foundation purchased a vacant, dilapidated motel and helped a community college rehab that dilapidated motel into student housing for the community college, right? And so now, because of that investment, there is a growing population of young people in their downtown core that are walking to and from the community college, that are um, um, uh, shopping at local businesses, really changes the face of their community. In Bloomington, Indiana, a foundation was approached by a nonprofit that was in a bit of a crisis. The facility that it was in was being sold, and they didn't have a place to move. And this nonprofit was a critical shelter facility, but it also provided high quality early childhood education. And they were in the process of building a fundraising strategy to create that new facility. This foundation didn't have enough capital to outright grant make that facility into existence. But what they could do is, based on the gifts that nonprofit had collected, they could help finance the new facility. And as a result, that nonprofit built a facility with more beds than they had previously and more child care slots than they had previously. Finally, in Buhler, Kansas, their community foundation in early COVID days was able to help a small rural area lay fiber optic so that the young kids in that community could participate in remote education, right? So immediate critical need, immediate financing available so that broadband could happen in a rural place. And what does this look like at these foundations, right? So we talk a little bit about business models of foundations, the kind of legacy model being that 95% of a foundation's assets are traditionally invested and 5% of that capital is distributed annually in the form of grants. Grants are entirely responsible for accomplishing the mission of the foundation, while traditional investments are entirely responsible for generating a financial return to support grant making, right? And the emerging model is more of a hybrid, right? You still have your grants portion, but you have a new community impact investment sliver, which could be Again, 1%, 5%, 10%, but these are investments that are made in a mission-aligned way. And then you have your traditional investments, or increasingly other foundations are talking about mission compatible investments, right? So they make sure that that the traditional investments at least are not harming the foundation's mission and strategy in its community. Um, as foundations move into this work, I think it's critical to think about that your institutions are not doing this alone. You're doing this in a community capital ecosystem, right? That includes a set of capital providers, which are your foundations, but also banks and credit unions, other institutions in your place that are supplying capital to capital aggregators, right? Again, those might be funds, community development corporations, other entities. Um, that is happening in the context of capital demand, right? Specific investment opportunities in businesses or housing developments or land trusts, right? These are entities that use that capital to create the mission-aligned impact in your place. And then certainly capital enablers, right? So these are technical assistance providers that support this financing activity, right? So just because your foundation is going to make capital available to do impact investing in your place, there's also this programmatic level and the way you interact with your community that changes as you become an impact investor so that you partner and collaborate with these entities in new and different ways in your place. So, how does the accelerator help your foundation make progress in this work? And I'll start with kind of who is the accelerator for and who is it not for, and then I'll kind of get into the specific structures of the program, right? So, the accelerator is great for foundations that are seeking to build new or substantially update their impact investment programs, right? So if you're looking for a small tweak or a small policy change, this is not the right level of initiative for you, right? This is kind of a big, once in 5 year type strategy development opportunity for your foundation. The accelerators also works with foundations in a defined geography, right? So if you're a foundation that serves a county, a state, or a region, um, that's the kind of peers that you're going to have in the program, right? And we find that it's critical that foundations have a defined geography, but also a governance that is representative and responsive to community, right? So community foundations are great examples of this. Health conversion foundations that have representative boards are kind of an important starting point for the accelerator. Um, uh, I'd also say that this is an action-oriented accelerator, right? So foundations that are coming into this accelerator should have the idea that they're committed to program implementation, right? Um, you can be a learner, but having folks in the accelerator that are in the process of having active conversations with their board about creating programs are going to be much more successful in the accelerator. I'd also encourage foundations to have kind of open cultures and tools to discuss shared community prosperity, equity, and power. Um, when you're talking about your investments, you're talking about your institution's kind of most precious resources, and you're talking about how you make decisions about those resources. And there's no way that you can have that conversation without discussing power and equity in your place. And then because this is a peer program, we encourage the foundations that participate have a culture of sharing with peers and learning in a combined board and staff environment, right? So we'll get into that structure in a moment. So in the accelerator, your foundation first identifies a source of investment funds, right? Foundations can be complex structures. Where is the capital that you're going to do your impact investing work come from? And how does that interact with the other investable assets of your foundation? And that can be one of the most challenging conversations that you have in the setup or redesign of an impact investment program. The second thing you will do in your accelerator is you're going to stand up an impact investment committee or modify or reform the structure of an impact investment committee. Uh, Gene might be able to speak to this, but having a committee that is specifically tasked with weighing risk, impact, and financial return is essential for the success of your program. And we've found that traditionally, your kind of old school investment committee is not usually well designed for that task. In the accelerator, you draft and ratify an investment policy, a set of investment procedures, and a scorecard for assessing potential investments in your community that are aligned with your mission. We help your foundation stand up a pipeline process and, if ready, identify a test investment in your community. We help foundations initiate that kind of risk and impact culture discussion that you will be having for the rest of your time as an impact investor. And then also you join a network of peers engaged in community investing. And I mentioned we've had 27 foundations now go through the accelerator program. So the structure of the program is that foundations stand up a core team of 5 to 9 members that are going to make a approximately 40-hour commitment over the course of the year to the foundation's program development. And these 5 to 9 members come from the foundation's board, the staff, sometimes the investment committee of the foundation, and occasionally, if it's appropriate for your foundation, maybe a community member or two. If you're a community foundation, a donor or two that are interested in this work. The foundations also set aside additional staff time to complete assignments, conduct a portfolio survey, engage in community grounding conversations, review policy documents with attorneys, and consult with traditional investment advisors. So this is a large undertaking for the core team. It's an even larger undertaking for a couple of the staff members of a foundation. We also encourage a foundation to set aside several hours for board and committee engagement. So if you're mapping out your board meetings for 2027, setting aside a couple hours for discussion of impact investing is essential, as well as your proposed program. Um, there is a program fee of $35,000. There are some scholarships and funding assistance available, particularly in Kansas this year. Um, we also can do fundraising assistance to help you put together a proposal for donors or other funders that might support your foundation in doing this work. And then the last thing that foundations are asked to do is to complete an intent to participate form this year, and that will be available in August. What do foundations receive in this process? Well, the structure of the accelerator is um, kind of really held up by 6 half-day workshops that start in March or April and occur monthly. There's a little pause in the summer, but then they resume in late summer and into the fall. And those 6 half-day workshops kind of walk you through the process of design or redesign of your program, right? One is on impact, one is on source of funds, one is on risk mitigation and success management, one is on communication strategies in your place. we have those conversations as kind of the principal gathering points for the foundations to share progress, to share questions with each other, but also to hear from other foundations that are impact investors and how they are designing their programs and doing this work in their community. Foundations have a dedicated coach that works with just their foundation to design and build their program. And in addition to those workshops, there are 6 tailored coaching sessions with that coach and the foundation core team to craft your specific program, your foundation specific program documents and tools. And then the foundation will receive, by the end of the year, a full set of program documents for your impact investing work. And I just we don't know what this is going to look like for 2027, but I just wanted to provide you a preview of what the program looks like this year. Our coaches include Colby Daly, who has experience as kind of helping health institutions do this work. Stephanie Randolph, who's now with the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, but previously helped stand up Invest Appalachia and was at the Cassiopeia Foundation. Rosalie Sheehy Cates, who started a CDFI in Montana called MoFi and worked with the Giving Practice in Philanthropy Northwest. I'm one of the coaches, and then Len Bartel, who was previously at CF Leeds and the Maine Health Access Foundation, is also supporting one of the teams. And our guest speakers this year have all of the teams this year are community foundations, so all of our guest speakers have been community foundations. The participants have heard from Boreal Waters Foundation, um, Austin Community Foundation's retiring CFO came in and shared with the group, the investment manager for the San Francisco Foundation. So a lot of peer foundations that are kind of deep into this work and have been doing it for, in some cases, decades. So that is kind of an overview of the accelerator program, what you would hope to kind of achieve and what it looks like. I'm happy to take questions about that. I'm also happy to just take general questions about impact investing, dig deeper into specific content, whatever you all would like to discuss.
This was very thorough, Travis, and I especially appreciated the readiness slide. Is this for you? And it is a
Yeah.
right now or maybe later kind of thing. So I really, really appreciated that. And in fact, would we be able to have access to these slides that I can share with some staff?
Yep, they'll absolutely. So these slides, as well as the video of this presentation, um, the intent to participate, and other resources will all be posted uh, on the investment project website. And I will send that out as a link afterwards. And the other info session, so if you have, hey, a board member wasn't able to participate today and you want to encourage them to come in August, they can sign up there as well. And also, Pedro, to your maybe this isn't for you, but hey, maybe you know a foundation in your community that would benefit from kind of a structured learning opportunity that would help them make investments in entities like yours. That's another way that you could share this content with them.
Travis, also in Kansas and Wichita in October, your pre-session, could I attend just that and pay for just that, or is that part of the conference?
Yeah, no. So, great question. Yeah. Every year for community foundations, there's an annual national conference for growing community foundations in Wichita. It's a mouthful. But there is a 1 day convening for community foundations that are impact investors or impact investor curious. And that's just a 1 day conference that is about all things impact investing, right? So absolutely go to that. There'll
Okay,
be a lot of foundations, but that's something separate from this kind of specific program that's designed to help foundations build programs. Yeah.
excellent.
Travis, thank you for the presentation. It's very comprehensive. I do appreciate it. How many community foundations or potential investors for the impact investing do you need to launch the accelerator program in March or in the spring of next year? I was
Yes.
thinking you had a number.
Yeah, we do. I think because we have a guaranteed funder for a couple Kansas foundations, I think we are moving forward. Traditionally, we've said in the past that we need to get 4 foundations to launch a cohort. If we get, for instance, 8 foundations, we may actually do 2 cohorts in 2027. Um, uh, but that's part of why we do the intent to participate at the end of the year to get a sense of how many foundations are coming forward and how best to organize them to accomplish their learning objectives in the cohort. And we have a sister organization, Multiplier Advisors, that really focuses on health conversion foundations that are in the process of building programs, and so that's another kind of in the mix question that we'll address in the intent to participate phase of the cohort.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions about impact investing or the accelerator?